welcome everybody to the Vulnerability Podcast Network. My name is Emily Gomer, and I'm a podcast engineer here. And excited to bring you another episode of the regular shows of Who Cares, Todd Lingle and the Cares Foundation, who have recently. Um, so, with nothing further to do, bring them in. Todd in and to kick us off today with a couple of great guests.
Hello, everybody. I'm Todd Lingle with Who Cares. We're going to have a great day today, every day. We have some wonderful guests on. Kurt, thank you for being here. Emily, thank you very much. So our first guest, without further ado, is an awesome woman that I've met and I've known, even though she was really early. Well, did I say it out loud? Her name is the wonderful Annie Sires. She is the founder of Mirrorview Marketing. Annie, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, thank you, Todd. Thanks for that little dig too. I appreciate that. So I am. Well, my story is kind of wild and crazy. I grew up in a military family, and I'm actually fifth generation of six generations serving our country. My all the way from my great grandfather. My grandfather served in World War I twice, actually. My uncle served in World War II. My dad served during the Vietnam War. My brothers both served. I served, and my daughter is currently serving. And after I left the military, I married a military guy, and I spent 28 years following him around to various lovely spots in the world to further the interests of the United States, whatever those were. And in doing that, I chose different things to do in my own life to support what he was doing, to support, always in service. So I was a police officer and a paramedic for a while. And in that iteration, I got to come across a lot of people of different abilities. And when I was a paramedic, I spent almost 8 years as a paramedic, and my last location was in Rhode Island. And we were strategically situated in the middle of three different traumatic brain injury institutes. There, I needed a cup of coffee, right, Todd? And in being around that, I learned a way to communicate with people so that what was going on in their life, usually in an emergent situation, I could communicate that need to other people. And in dealing with people with traumatic brain injuries, you get a whole gamut of abilities. And you get people who are non-communicative. You get people who are non-reactive. You get even to the extremes where you get some kind of reactive personalities and reactive problems. And it's not only traumatic brain injuries, it's also injuries of other kinds that have caused kind of behavioral things and things like that. And so then you talk about, as a police officer, Todd and you and I have talked about both our passion at helping people that have, suffered some kind of injury from their own behavior or from others' behavior behind the wheel. And I don't know if you can't really see my quote here, but it's St. Francis of Assisi, and he says, "For it is in giving that we receive." And my whole life, everything I was ever taught was to give to others. And so my business now and my passion is helping others with financial literacy, because when my husband passed away far too young, I learned in my own self that there has to be a financial foundation for others, that you have to understand how the game is played so that you can play the game and just get ahead, just making it so you're standing on your own 2 feet. And then on the other side of that is there has to be a way to help people go from their situation, the life they were living, to the next stage in that, especially for our military and our veterans. That is it's a very misunderstood by the civilian world. That transition is very difficult for the military. And so those are kind of my passions in life. So there you go.
Well, Annie, first I want to say thank you for your service and for your family's service as well. I really appreciate that. Um, and I sent the forms out to you to fill out earlier, and I have here, why do you want to be on your podcast channel? And I want to read this first section you have on here, because I think it just sums it all up for us. It says, Mirror View combines a unique vision of agricultural entrepreneurship with veteran empowerment, offering a powerful story of how a working ranch can transform lives through hands-on experience with livestock, financial education, and purposeful reintegration into civilian life. I think that's wonderful because, like you say, you have that financial base, and then you're going out and helping them integrate back into society and using animals and agricultural to do that. Because, as you know, near and dear to my heart, I grew up on a dairy and farm in Idaho. So that's wonderful what you're doing, and the purpose driven, again, like you said, helping others. That's wonderful.
The side business that I had for almost more than 30 years was dog and horse training. And I myself went through trauma as a child. And then I had some things happen to me while I was in the military. And all the time, every time when I was a kid, it was the animals that I could lean on, from the tiny little, I had mice and bunny rabbits, when I was a kid, and, various different animals. And when I became a teenager, I started training dogs and horses. And the more I learned, the better I could communicate with them, the better I felt inside, the more stable that I was. And it's played out. You can see it in groups like the prisoners who train horses, and the pit bulls for parolees, and all these different things. There's something, and I don't remember who said it. There's something good. Oh, Winston Churchill. There is something about the outside of a horse that is good for the inside of a man. And to me, there is a healing that happens you get these really tough people, like you get they've been through a lot, they've been through a difficult situation, and it's not just riding them, it's a communication that you build between a person who's been through a very difficult thing and helping them understand, how do I get goodness out of something that it just wants to work with you, wants to please you. And how do you bring it out of sometimes bad situations? You rescue a horse or you rescue a dog. And, I trained dogs for like 35 years. Okay. And I told people, and I'll tell you, I've trained hundreds and hundreds of dogs, and I've only met one dog ever that could not be trained. And I've seen dogs that were doing some terrible, terrible things, and they were just reacting to the program that they had been given. And I think people are like that too. I think that if you can take somebody who has been forged as a tool for the U.S. military that is now discarded, the military firmly says, yeah, it's shocking how badly the government treats this thing that they have put so much time and effort into, and then just discard them. And it's so hard on that person because they're trained for such a specific thing, and your mental state is such that I am the tip of the spear. I may not be the gun, but I'm the one holding that, and I am the protection for my family, and I'm the foundation for my family. And if I don't do it, no one else can. And if I'm not there, no one else is going to be there for them. And or my buddies, or whoever they attach to. And so then you take this person and they've been discarded. Well, you're not useful anymore, you're not a knife anymore, so we're going to throw you away. And it's very hard for those guys as they transition to pick up a purpose in life that is as strong as the one they just left. And this is not a political statement at all. When the government treats them without the worth that they truly are, that makes them feel even worse. And I'm talking about the situations that have happened around them. The thing about Afghanistan, and this is not, again, not a political statement, it's just a lot of the guys who were there, they came out and they go, well, then why were we there? Why did my best friend die? And if you can't have a good answer for that, that person is now going to be considering suicide. And for a while, there was a conversation about 22 a day. And after the Afghan withdrawal, I firmly believe, and the VA is not talking about it, but I think the number's doubled. I think it's more like 44 a day now. And when you look at that and you understand that it's that hopelessness, how do you give those people hope? How do you give them a voice? And how do you give them the power in their own hands to set a purpose for themselves? And I believe business, giving them the funny thing about the military is that they'll take, just Private Snuffy. We call it, the generic name for a military guy is Private Snuffy. Okay. They'll take Private Snuffy. They'll make him very good at being a weapon, but then, like a knife, you put the knife into multiple situations. So the military teaches you to be very entrepreneurial in a way, be very able to pivot. Like you and I have had a conversation about how you've had to pivot multiple times in your business. Well, the military automatically teaches you that. And so then when you come out, but you only have a high school education and maybe some college, and you come out and the military has told you, well, you're worth $150,000, whatever. And you come out and the civilian world looks at you and says, well, you're not worth that. You're only worth $40,000 a year, if that. And you have you have children and a family, and the stress and all these things play into this whole mentality of these guys coming out. And if we can help them by giving them a mental safety net in training dogs and horses, and then a physical and financial safety net by teaching them the things they should have learned and then helping them build a business, I think that threefold container will help them regrow in the places that they need to grow. So there you go. That's like the whole overarching vision there. So
no, that's awesome. And, because as I'm 52, but my dad was in Vietnam, a portion of Vietnam. And, I just hear him when he tells the veterans coming back that nobody even cared. So, thankful for what you're doing and what is out there for the veterans, and what Kurt's doing for the veterans as well, and disabled. So that's a wonderful thing. Kurt, do you have anything to add in?
Well, I think, Annie, if you could help us tie it into, our show here. We were talking before our show, Who Cares? And, you called it tongue in cheek, and, and Todd cheered, we care. And, Todd started Cares Foundation for, kind of building something out of the legacy of his mom and sister, and the whole thing there is drunk driving. And when you went into the element of suicide ideation, we know that drugs and alcohol can be right akin to that life journey. Annie, can you speak to that a little bit of your experience, how the situations you're responding to, how it could equate to a veteran, unfortunately, going out and being that drunk driver as well?
Well, it speaks very much to the idea of worthlessness and worthfulness, right? Like in the military, you are trained, you're honed, even if you're a paper pusher, some guy writing, DD 214s or whatever in the back office, he still is built as the guy who is part of the spear. We're the protection for our family, and everybody has their important part. And nobody is more important than anyone else. And most of the hierarchy knows this. You talk to a general or colonel, he knows he wouldn't have his battalion if he didn't have every one of those guys, and each one of those men is doing an important job. So there's this a feeling of camaraderie, a feeling of togetherness, and a very, very strong shared purpose. And so you have a giant machine and every piece is critical. And then you pull one piece out and replace it. And that piece, that person is now, but wait, I was so important. I was critical to the workings of this. Now you're telling me I'm not. And very often it's totally taking the foundation of their strength away. Now, my husband had brain cancer, and brain cancer in a way is very much like when you leave the military, because it emasculates you in a way. You have no control over your health. You have no control over this situation. And men, you're in the military, everything is under your control. Even if it isn't, it is. And so now you've taken all that away. You've taken away this foundation, and they're looking for a way to fill that foundation. And it's going and doing things. It's doing the drugs. So it starts. And for the military, you voluntarily abuse yourself a little bit. Like, I was in basic training and I had pneumonia, and I ran on pneumonic lungs for 2 weeks, because it's expected of you to push yourself a little harder. So that falls back when you get out later. Now you have knee damage and back damage, and you have all this stuff. And so you get your 100% rating, but the first trigger that the military doctors give you is, let me give you painkiller. It happened to me. And that was the first thing. They were like, well, there's not much we can do. Here's your painkiller. And I was like, I can't accept that as my future forever. And so that's a very slippery slope. You go down, you start with one painkiller, and eventually your body doesn't quite, it absorbs it. Now you need more. And then you need, well, you can't exercise. You can't be healthy. So other things start falling apart, and it becomes this domino effect of loss of usefulness, attitude, in pain. Chronic pain is a terrible thing, and it just keeps going down and down. And so these guys they're looking for the answer that they don't have anymore. They're looking for something to fill that void. How do I stop being in pain? How do I feel purpose? How do I feel better about what's up here and what's in here? And what do I do to do that? And a lot of them fall into drugs and alcohol. And so that becomes its own major danger, because typical military, we all estimate our abilities, right? And so having been on the other side of that, it only takes one drink. And people don't realize that. They definitely, absolutely overestimate their abilities, and they get out on the road. And I had family members who did that, and thank God none of them hurt anybody. But we knew it was only a matter of time, and we begged. And that's the other thing: the family members have no control over it. So the wife, the kids, they have no say in it. And so it's almost like you have to stop the flood before it becomes a flood. Give them help when they need the help, but also prevent the problem before it becomes a problem. So that's part of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, you're doing great work. I commend you for that fully.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it kind of, excuse me, we're all tied together. And Molly is here with us as well. You're doing your veteran stuff, and they could get into that where they need the alcohol and the drugs to kind of mute what's going on, and kind of leads into where my mom and sister were killed by a drunk driver and what we do at CARES Foundation. And then it leads us into Molly and what she's doing. And Molly, tell us a little bit about what your thoughts on what Annie was talking about.
Well, I think that's really helpful and can mean a lot for society.
Okay, great. So I know we haven't introduced you very well. This is Molly Welch, and she has a nonprofit called A Second Later. And Molly, why don't you tell us just a little bit about what you're doing?
Sure. 16 years ago, I drove head on with a pickup truck, and I sustained traumatic brain injury, and I was in a coma, minimally conscious. Went from a bed to a wheelchair to a walker to a cane, and after years of physical, speech, and occupational therapy, I worked for a social media company, and that was all good because it was like my major of journalism. But the only problem was we had to sleep with them all day and had no social interaction. So I started to get an idea. I started to think, why not use my experiences to help others not have to deal with all this pain and suffering I did. So I took Uber to Starbucks one day, and I started to have a conversation with the business owner, and he helped me create a public service announcement. He also helped me create a nonprofit motivational speaking company. They are both called A Second Later, and so far I've spoken on TEDx, to the legislation of Georgia, to many high schools, driving schools, nonprofits, and clubs. But my favorite group to speak to is high school students, because they're all new drivers and need to hear my message the most. But I've only, outside of Georgia, I've been to the state of Alabama twice, and I need to go everywhere and spread a message to every state.
That's awesome. Thank you for what you're doing and bringing the awareness. And I'm so sorry that happened to you, but it's great that you're taking something was not a really great thing and turning it around and being a positive inspiration for the communities. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's what I try to do as well with what my story was. It's taken me a long time to get there. So I appreciate that. And then Annie, you as well. I mean, taking what you've learned and everything from the military and turning it to be something positive to help our veterans coming home. I want to take just a minute, Annie, if you would tell us how people would contact you to get a hold of you to help you out?
So that's a great question. Corinthian Ranch and Mirrorview are on the web. We're revamping the website, but it's up and running. So you can go to mirrorviewmarketing.com. That's kind of our umbrella agency that covers all the different pieces. So mirrorviewmarketing.com and look at some of the things we're doing. We had to go through a whole rebuild, so it doesn't have a lot of stuff on there yet, but we're getting there. Also, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on the various social media, so reach out to me there. And you can reach out to me personally on the email at info@mirrorviewmarketing.com. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me and ask me questions, see where we need help. Our goal is, so we have big dreams. And the first is about 1,500 acres of land, and that will be a working cattle ranch to help provide for the nonprofit side for training and education and all that stuff. And then eventually it'll be 10,000 acres in the middle of central Missouri and maybe more across the United States. That's kind of our goal, is a place where people, not just military, but people can come and we have big dreams. So that if you want to know all the dreams, just let me know. I'll tell you all about
All right. That's awesome. And Molly, I know we're getting down a little bit. I want to give you a chance too. How do we get a hold of you to be able to help you out and see what you're doing more?
Well, thank you. You can either go to my website, which is asecondlater.com, or email me at asecondlatermedia@gmail.com, or I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and I always post my new engagements or new up and coming events on those sites. So check them out.
All right. Well, thank you. And Kurt, go ahead and you have any questions for any of us or anything like that? Step in.
All right. Well, let's check in a little bit about what Molly adds with distracted driving and so forth. The question for you, Annie, do you have any reaction to that in your life journey in terms of what's been around you across your lifetime in terms of distracted driving? Any confessions where you maybe at some point in life did the distract? Because I know when I met Molly, I'm like, I confess, I'm like, she, for all I know, she saved my life because I succumb to the temptation with all this entrepreneurialism, try to be of service. You got that heart, like somebody's trying to get a hold of you, and you take that phone. So what do you think, Annie, about all that?
Well, actually, distracted driving is near and dear to my heart because as a police officer, I was a police officer in a city in Virginia, and we used to say that 1 in 6 during the day and 1 in 3 at night was drinking. That was before the advent of cell phones. Yes, I'm that old. Okay. So now there's so many distractions that those numbers are totally blown out of the water. And it's because there's so many things out there that are going to pull our attention. I actually applaud Molly for being that voice. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear put down your phone or stop texting, or they see the highway sign that says put down your phone or don't text or don't drink, and it's like when you're a teenager and your mom's telling you to take out the trash, you just don't want to hear it. And I think you and Todd both have very powerful voices to be talking to these kids as they come out. I actually taught AAA driving for a little while, and when everybody's first in a car, they're very terrified, right? Like when you're 18 and you're first learning to drive, you're terrified, but then you become habitualized to that the ability to handle 2,000 pounds of vehicle flying down the road. And so you pick up your phone because your friend calls you or whatever, and it only takes that split second and then tragedy. And I am truly sorry. I unfortunately helped way too many people in both Todd's family situation and in yours, that it only took a moment. And you're right, 1 second later, that's all it takes. And so I personally learned that lesson very young, not like I was probably 20 when I learned that lesson, because I saw too many people getting hurt. So I'm very both with alcohol and with phone, I'm very stringent about that. So, but everybody's got to learn that lesson somehow. So I applaud you, Molly.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you very much for sure, Molly. We're getting down to the time here. I appreciate both of you being on. You know, we started before we came on live with telling a dad joke. I will not suffer with a dad joke. I promise. But I want to thank you. Oh, the dad joke. Yeah, there, Kurt. I want to thank.
Okay,
both of you.
wait. I've got a joke. It's not a dad joke, though. Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right. You know the green grapes, right?
Yeah.
Right. What's the nationality of green grapes?
Greenland.
Irish. I don't know.
Swedish.
Oh, of course.
Nice.
Very
Okay,
good.
that will classify as a dad joke.
I know, it was close. It was close. It was good.
All right. Well, Annie from Mirrorview Marketing, appreciate it. And Molly from A Second Later, thank you so much for being on. And again, this is Who Cares? We're here every Wednesday morning at 9:30 Arizona time, Mountain Time. And so we thank you so much, and we look forward to next week. And Annie, when we have you on next time, we'll make sure you get you on at time, not an hour early. So
To Central, 9:30 Central. No, 9:30 Arizona. Right. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I got you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being on, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody next week on Who Cares.
That was awesome. That was good.
Emily, you out there?
Should I go?
Hang on 1 second. We're still live. Once we go off live, we'll chat for a second.
Why don't we try this real quick? Why don't we take about 20 seconds, shut off our cameras? Maybe she's got something where she doesn't have sound or something. But if we turn our cameras off, that might cue her.